Act responses. Obviously, the CEQA and environmental work that we're doing, labor and employment, and real estate. These are the primary areas where we seek their services. Next slide. We negotiated the first task order and the 5-year contract with BBK over the past few weeks. What we are bringing forward here are permissions to approve a 5-year plus 2-month contract with the ability to renew in up to 5-year increments. The proposed contract value is $3.9 million over the first contract period, which is the 5-year and 2 months. And this is consistent with historical expenditures of our legal services. We're also requesting a 15% contingency of $585,000 that would be utilized with prior board approval. All work will be authorized with negotiated and signed task orders consistent with annual budget approvals. Next slide. This table shows the proposed year-to-year budgets that make up the total base contract value as well as the contingency. Again, consistent with our historical expenditures with annual escalations. As you'll see, for this fiscal year, there's $110,000. That's because the current contract with BBK for interim services expires at the end of this month. So that's intended to cover the period of May and June of this fiscal year. Next slide. So, sorry, trying to clear this out here. What we're asking for is authorization to execute the 5-year professional services agreement with BBK for the contract sum of $3.9 million, covering the period of May of this year through June 30th of 2025. And the second thing that we are authorizing is to sign the task order for the $110,000 for this year's fiscal budget. And their next year's fiscal amount will be included in our annual budget approval that we'll be bringing to you in May and June for approval. With that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Comment?
Yes, sir.
I think that we've been very well served up to this point by Best and Krieger, and I support their continuation.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to hire BB&K as the most qualified of the candidates that we received and per staff's recommendation.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion? Questions? Father, can we have a roll call, please?
Unmute.
Claudia.
Director Estamera, sorry.
Aye.
Director Palmer.
Aye.
Director Atwater.
Aye.
Director Blois.
Aye.
Unanimously passes motion. Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move right along to our next item on the agenda.
Next item is stakeholder engagement, and Nasli will be providing an update.
Hi, everyone. Hope you are all doing well and feeling safe. I'm going to go through what I had written in the document I provided you, but there's been a lot of back and forth in the last few days. So I want to make sure that you were aware of some of that back and forth. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer it. So as outlined in the document, as you all know, since the last meeting anyway, we had our March 11th meeting, at which point we're already practicing social distancing and whatnot. And we decided to cancel the March 25th, the meeting that we had for the second Wednesday in April, and have gone on to delay all of our meetings up until next week, April 22nd. So wanted to, and obviously it'll be on teleconference, much like this. We have worked with our SEC members and continue to work them to make sure they have the right technology in order to be able to join the meeting, access the information. We'll be FedExing everybody. We decided this today. We haven't told the SEC yet. We'll be FedExing flash drives. And as always, our information will be available to download on the computer. And we're also looking into how to sort of break up the packet or condense it in a way that makes sense without losing integrity of our materials, just because our materials tend to be very sort of dense in terms of the illustrations and the programs we use to illustrate our maps and our construction concepts. The meeting on April 22nd is the sort of final facility siting. So we've sort of come to the end of essentially our kind of tunnel 101, as we called it. And the final presentation is the South Delta facilities. And it'll be a chance to sort of go over those, some of the options, some of the facility considerations, and to potentially get feedback, or as we said to everyone, if folks do not feel like they can give feedback or they feel like they can't do outreach at this time, we've said we are happy to hold off for those unable to do it until May or June. So that is the sort of summary of what's written. Let me go through some of the, I guess, controversy. I don't think there's a better word for it, over the last few days, which is that we had called a couple weeks ago all of the SEC members to sort of say, would you be able to attend April 22nd? And all but two that we reached, I think we reached everybody, but all but two said, we cannot. There's extenuating circumstances. Things are very difficult at this time, which obviously we understand, right? I think one of the dangers that we fall into sometimes is sort of presenting as a monolith. The SEC is not a monolith. It's only 20 individuals. And all of us who work on behalf of the DCA are also not sort of this monolith agency, and same with the board. We're individuals. We are all going through everything together. Some are able to do it better than others. Some have challenges that are unprecedented. So I do want to sort of make it very clear that we're all kind of in the same struggle. You know, I too have a child with special needs who is not going to school, who can't access therapies. And we manage, and we have great leadership with respect to Catherine, the board as well, where if somebody said, look, I'm having a really difficult time, we can consider individual cases and figure out how we can kind of make that all work. And that obviously goes to the SEC. People were chosen based on the diversity of their backgrounds and which groups they present. Some are able to join and others aren't. I think the real controversy might have been, Catherine said, you know, there's overwhelming support in order to go forward with the SEC meeting. There's a difference, and we have always understood this, right, between wanting this project to go forward wholesale versus participating as part of the SEC. We've been super clear with everybody that being part of the SEC does not mean that you are in any way showing support for the project. We understand that, and we appreciate that people still want to give us input on design and engineering considerations. And again, we got letters that said asking people to pause either the SEC meetings or the entire project. And to me, you can attend the meeting in April and want to pause or cancel the SEC meetings or the tunnel project indefinitely or until the pandemic is over. Those are not mutually exclusive things. You can do both. So the notion that we have not heard the sort of issues come up or that I was not communicating them is a little bit, I don't know how to say it, but the message was received loud and clear. And I will say that for some of the folks who said they couldn't come to the meeting on the 22nd, they've also said, actually, I will come, I want my meeting saved. And I'm sorry, let me make a clarification. All but two said they could attend the 22nd. Two people said, I've got extenuating circumstances. I'm sorry if I mixed that up. What we have always said is we deal with design and construction considerations. I understand that there have been plenty of letters to DWR, to the governor, at every level of government, asking to pause this project. From what we have gathered, again, it's not quite within my purview. It's DWR and the governor's decision to stop or halt projects. We got a letter, as I think everyone else did, which is that California State continues to run where possible and continue work on critical infrastructure projects throughout the entire state. People's personal feelings on whether or not they like that project notwithstanding, I think that the main ethos is that government continues to run. I also want to point out that if the SEC wants to not have further meetings, the SEC is more than free to make that decision on April 22nd. We have an agenda item set up to discuss sort of the future moving forward. We work in the long term. When the stay-at-home came in, stay-at-home notification came in, certainly for the Bay Area, it was meant as a 2-week stay-at-home. Then it turned into 4 weeks. We're now going up to May 4th. I don't personally view this, again, as a short-term sort of issue. We'll see, and it's obviously gets evaluated by scientists and professionals and doctors who are all advising our government officials. But it gets reassessed all the time. And so we're trying to deal with a 3 to 6 month timeline, and we don't know how long that'll be. So we think that the best thing to do is to move forward. And again, if the SEC disagrees, they're happy if there's a quorum on April 22nd, and they said, look, we do not want to have the May 22nd meeting or whatnot. That's completely up to the SEC. And I want to be really clear. I think it's only up to the SEC. We got a letter from the Delta Protection Committee, who was totally fine and able to have their own meeting last week, but called upon us to cancel our meetings. So it seems a little bit odd to have other agencies and sister government agencies be functioning and then call upon us to cancel the meetings. We've also heard from SEC individuals that say, please don't speak on all of our behalves. Everyone's an individual member. So we've gotten the complaints from some who said, I don't want to continue. And we've gotten notes from others that said, we are fine to go to onwards. It's an advisory committee. So I think the one thing I do want to make clear to the board is if the SEC meetings do not continue, what we lose is an avenue for feedback on the project. The project, as far as I know, carries on. So if the SEC chooses to cancel their meetings, to me, that's more of a loss of an avenue for public commentary or public feedback on engineering and construction concerns. And for anyone who feels like they've been pressured by me, I was kind of called out to say I would pressure folks. I'm just going to say I think we are all adults. If folks feel pressured, believe me, you do not need to attend. What I did try to make a point of is to say, come to the meeting, hear the last part of the facility sightings. If you can't deal with feedback or outreach, that's okay. We can save it for another time. But let me just be the first to sort of address this notion. And that includes for March 11th. We had a bit of a witch hunt with some SEC committee members saying, insisting that people had tested positive for COVID on the DCA staff, and had to kind of respond to all of them saying, A, that's not true, but just personally, I think that's just and we would have let folks know if it was true and if they were at risk. But we're not pressuring anybody to show up to situations where they don't feel safe. We're not pressuring anyone to show up into a situation where they can't participate in the way they'd like to. Again, we are all individuals with our unique freedoms. People can choose whether or not they'd like to attend. If we don't have a quorum on the 22nd, I'm going to say that that's what we'll do is just go over and rather than do an SEC meeting, present our information as a public webinar. And that comes to sort of my final point, which is that obviously this is sort of, we're living in strange times with a lot of unexpected things that come out of it. The last board meeting had 150 attendees. There's now 62 participants I see for this board meeting. And so there's an unexpected but welcome opportunity to broaden our outreach. We chose Wednesday afternoons because that was for our meetings in the Delta, because that was at the request of the SEC members. And it was a time and day that worked best for them. But having a meeting in a pretty secluded area from the hours of 3 to 6 opens up a whole list of folks who can't join that meeting. And so to have the Brown Act rules relaxed a little bit in order to allow us to teleconference, I think has really opened the door for participation in a way that, would be great to kind of try to take advantage of, and certainly has shown us that moving forward, we will try to make sure that within Brown Act rules, once they're kind of, the gate kind of shuts down again, that we'll still have an online forum available, because I think it's been really sort of helpful to all of us. We have sought a lot of different opportunities, again, for folks who have said they can't really get feedback or can't do outreach. We are launching a Facebook page, and we'll have feedback forms and whatnot, so people can let us know about, again, our design and siting construction considerations, what they think about locations and whatnot. We'll have Twitter in a few weeks. Our videos will all go up onto YouTube so that you can sort of stream it easier. And we'll have a new website. It won't be out till the end of June or so, but I think the website in general will be much easier to kind of navigate and provide a much more friendly place for the public to access all of our materials and documents and whatnot. So I think that we are trying to take all the measures that we can and try to help the SEC members and sort of take away some of the responsibility. I will say today, I think that we got one of our best letters from a member of the public out in Discovery Bay in terms of just a feedback letter. And that was really heartening to see. And, you know, she started with, I do not support this project. I have been a huge part of the protest and will continue to be, but please let me tell you about why I think this location isn't as good as this location, or letting us know about a 4th of July boat parade and how when we look into construction, we should make sure that no construction is done during that time because there'll be 2,000 boats in the area. That's just been incredibly helpful feedback. We've also gotten letters complaining about the actual SEC members and their ability to get feedback and represent people. And I promised Catherine no snarkiness, but one of those letters was definitely from somebody directly related to an SEC member. So without getting into too many family dynamics, we're trying to take into account the fact that we understand the SEC is not the end-all be-all of outreach, and we've always known that. But we also want to make sure people have always been able to write us, call us, request meetings. But part of our Facebook outreach and website and whatnot is to make that even more abundantly clear that feedback is not just is not only allowed within the SEC, it's allowed at any time. People can look at all of our materials. And the only thing we always say over and over is if you want to show up week after week and say, I don't like this project, that's fine. But that's not the world that we deal with. That is scoping. Scoping's been, that's the CEQA process and the CEQA comment. And the period for getting information in is, I think, open till tomorrow. It was also extended by about 4 weeks. So if folks would like to engage in looking at some of our sightings and our documents, if they would like to speak with us or have one-on-one presentations during this time, again, our staff is working, we're available, we can take people through some of those considerations. And sorry to be so verbose, but I did not want to get accused of not telling folks where folks stand. Again, everyone has received various letters from agencies or individual SEC members saying this is a very difficult time. We agree with them. We are all in a difficult time together. We also think that for a lot of folks, they're able and willing to work. And again, in terms of the SEC and the future of it, that's in the hands. That's an agenda item on the April 22nd agenda, which will be out tomorrow. And folks can decide on April 22nd whether or not they want to continue or not. Any questions?
I have a comment.
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted to read to you a letter that I got today. I am chair of the SEC, and I just said, identifying this person, I'll say, he says, I want to chime in regarding holding virtual SEC meetings. I support the DCA's intent to move forward with the SEC meetings in whatever manner and/or medium is productive and appropriate. Secondly, even though I remain generally opposed to the project, but because of the SEC, I see first time an opportunity for a constructive approach to identifying how the Delta and the Delta communities might be able to benefit. So there's more that he was talking about, but I'll just leave it at that. I thought it was a very interesting feedback, and there were some ideas that were put forward, and I'll go over that with you some other time.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I have some members of the public that would like to address us on this issue. So I'll just go right down the line. Ms. Barbara Barragan Perilla.
see. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Okay, so thanks for the opportunity to speak. What I wanted to share with you was, in first relation to the presentation and to last week's meeting, we sent a note to SEC staff or DCA staff all the way back on March 31st, indicating that there was a real problem here with community outreach. And that is our primary concern. I mean, first off, we're happy that everyone on the call is healthy and that we're able to participate. But I really want to remind everyone that serves on the DCA board and staff and other people listening to this call, that those of us who are on this call are actually pretty key in terms of the epidemic. We're privileged enough to work from home, and we have at least passable, internet connectivity. And we have professional abilities that leave us not wanting for the basics in life. The problem is in the Delta that we just have too many residents in poor rural and urban communities that frankly, they cannot focus on this infrastructure project right now. How it's going to impact their community, their water supply, and the environment. And that's why the update last week, and even in part what I'm hearing today, is so upsetting. The alternative isn't to participate or to not participate. We oppose the project. We engaged with this committee because we really want to work on good mitigation measures and solve as many problems in earnest as possible. But when we have residents who are struggling with their own jobs and families, complicated farming operations, buying devices isn't going to enable people in the Delta to have meetings. They don't even have decent connectivity. And frankly, even putting up Facebook pages right now, it's not the same. It's not the same as working with people in trusted relationships where you sit down with them and you take the maps and you take the materials and you take the things that you were supposed to see out in the field and have discussions and get broad input. We're dealing with groups that are dealing with food deserts in Isleton and in South Stockton, people advocating to trying to get testing done, people distributing food to people, sewing masks. They're not focused on this. We're also dealing with a much higher mortality rate around the urban Delta than in other parts of California. So I guess my statement to you is this idea that it's either or, I don't think is the answer. And I also think it's a little dangerous to just run the meetings as informational, because if you move too far ahead of the community, then how does the community ever catch up with the DCA?
That's a good point.
And the last thing I want to say is the SEC members who are saying, oh, the process is great, engage the process. Well, you have a number of committee members on that committee who only engage with maybe a limited group of people who look like themselves, or maybe talk to a network of 8 or 10 people in the Delta. The broader Delta community is really struggling. And if you go too far ahead of them, you will lose your goodwill. So, I understand what you're trying to do. And I understand that you believe this project is essential. I think there's questions about that, but what I worry about is if you go too far ahead and too fast, you are going to lose goodwill, and we're not going to be able to go back and backtrack and get that best input for you.
Thank you, Barbara. We'll move right along to our next speaker, Ms. Osha Meserve.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, Ms. Meserve.
Thank you. This is Osha Meserve on behalf of local agencies of the North Delta. I sent in a written comment in addition,
Yes.
because time is short. So hopefully you were able to receive that. I guess
Yes,
just
we
to
did
touch on
receive
a
it.
couple of, thank you. I think my main concern is that, and I think Ms. Bergen-Perea went over part of what I was concerned about, but what I heard in the update just now was that basically, you know, now's the time when the SEC can engage on giving feedback, and that if they choose not to do that right now, that the window will close. And I really object to that kind of framing of things, because I think the concern is that the engineering's going forward, and it's either now or never. And so that's not a great choice for members of the community who have signed up to be on the stakeholder committee, or others who regularly attend those meetings, such as myself. So I think, and I really, you know, I'm glad that that the board received a fuller explanation of what has been going on over the past couple of weeks just now, but I really objected to the brevity of the staff report. In addition, you know, like last month's meeting, we have more folks on the call today, and I attend this meeting every month on behalf of my clients, but I think it's unfair to say that your participation rates went up when people called in simply to ask that the DCA pause the process during the pandemic. So I think that's should be corrected and should not be repeated. So I would ask that you reconsider the moving forward, and that you do pause this stakeholder process and pause the engineering enough that we can circle back and get the input in there, because I don't think that having, you know, these online meetings is a substitute for that greater degree of engagement, and that folks can't, you know, to the extent you appointed people to the committee to hear back from certain segments of the population, even if the members of the committee can show up on the telephone, they're not able to have those interactions and gather the feedback. And I think, like at the beginning of this whole process, we were concerned that it become a check the box process, and then later on we see the write-up in the public participation section of the EIR or wherever else saying, yeah, we did this great process that included all this input. But right now, stakeholders are being told, you know, you participate now during a pandemic or you miss your chance. And I don't think that's fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meserve. The next speaker I have is Ms. Anna Swenson. Hello, Ms. Swenson. Did you unmute? Ah, okay. Ms. Swenson?
Maybe we can get her on telephone.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Sorry.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, Ms.
My name
Good
is
afternoon.
Anna. Hi, sir. How are you doing? So my name is Anna Swenson. I am the one of the SEC members that represents Yolo County and at large, and I really appreciate this opportunity to speak. Thank you so very much. I have taken my role on the SEC very seriously. I'm a community organizer, and I was so grateful for an opportunity to really reach out to our communities here and to discuss the project and the realities of the project, and to try to find ways to help these communities advocate for themselves, and maybe figure out a way where we could, you know, have a meeting of the middle of the road where maybe not everybody's happy, but some of the major concerns about the project could be addressed and maybe made a little bit less painful for these communities. So that's what, when I joined, that's what my intention was. And before COVID, I was attending up to 5 to 6 meetings a week in our communities to make sure that people understood what the plan was, where potentially there were sightings for launch pads, what a launch pad was, you know, some of the ideas about how we were going to maybe take some pressure off of the roads with haul roads and what that would look like. So in any case, I took it really very, very, very seriously because I was grateful for an opportunity for our communities to be educated and informed about what this project was, because that was always lacking in all of the other iterations of this project. And so then COVID hit, and because of our lack of internet, and I'm going to say this, we need your help here in the Delta because I have 5 kids who now have to attend school remotely, and we have to go on shifts over who gets to watch video conferencing with their teachers or me with my employer, because it can't handle all of us on at the same time, right? So we have to stagger. And there are people in the Delta who internet, unfortunately, they don't have, but that may be not even their most significant issue because we're experiencing lots and lots of cases of folks who don't have food. Our administrators here at our schools are driving meals around the Delta to try to, you know, feed the children of the Delta who parents maybe can't at this point because they don't have a job, are really struggling. And so there's a lot of things that are happening in the Delta that are unique and a lot of things that are not unique to this COVID situation. But with this COVID situation, it's making it nearly impossible for me to reach out and engage with my community. I appreciate that you want to put stuff on Facebook or you want to do things electronically, and probably in your world, that would be fantabulous outreach. But in my world, you're reaching an audience who's basically using the equivalent of dial-up. So watching videos is very difficult, especially live and engaging, interacting videos, that kind of stuff is very, very difficult. And what we need right now is we need organizations like yours to come and try to help us pull through this national emergency. And then at that moment, then we can go back to life as we were before and engage and get input and create a project that you guys possibly could be proud of, but because you could say that you really, you know, genuinely attempted to engage with the community. You really got feedback. You really did reach folks. And this is the best project that could be possibly put forward, if that's possible. I still against it because I live here and, you know, all that. But my point is that I would really appreciate it if you would please consider to just put this on pause, because there's no way for me to do the job that I want to do for you and bring you the input that you need to have a project that represents not just Santa Clara, not just the Delta, not just the South, but all of California, right? So I appreciate the moment to talk. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the SEC, and the way and the volume of the information that we are given that then we need to distribute. If you keep marching forward and I can't keep up with you, there's no way I'll ever be able to, you know, convey that information to the communities, you know, and be able to distribute it. So I appreciate it. The staff has done a great job. They've given me flash drives during the time when things were normal that I was able to distribute to folks. It was a very good process, and unfortunately, this has stepped in our way. So I appreciate you. Thank you for your time, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Winston. And our last request was from Melissa Tayaba.
Hello?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi. Hello. I'm going to be reading 2 statements today, and I'll start off with mine first.
Yes.
Dear DCA board members, hello, my name is Melissa Tayaba. I'm a tribal member of the Shingle Springs Rancheria Band of Miwok Indians. I currently sit on the Delta Stakeholder Engagement Committee. I am the tribal representative for this SEC committee representing Delta tribes. Delta tribes want to make sure that their voice is heard on this project and let the DCA know that we strongly feel this project will hurt tribes. Tribal concerns involve the destruction of our traditional waterways, sacred sites, village sites, gathering sites, and natural resources that will be greatly affected. Tribes would like to address our plant and animal relatives and really take a look at how to save them from extinction and the issue of water quality on the river. We request that all hearings, meetings, and public comment periods related to the Delta Conveyance project be postponed until the current national COVID-19 health pandemic is over. We stand in solidarity with the other tribes and the Delta Protection Commission in urging you to pause all Delta Conveyance project planning and design processes. At a time when lives are being lost, people are sick and or caring for sick loved ones, cities are sheltering in place, counties and tribal governments have shut down, Californians are losing their jobs, and the citizens of our state grapple with this very real and frightening crisis. We feel that true public engagement as well as meaningful consultation with tribes cannot be adequately accomplished under these unprecedented circumstances. At the federal level, on April 1st, 14th, House Committee chairs wrote a letter to the Office of Management and Budget requesting an immediate extension of public comment periods, hearings, and meetings due to the COVID-19 pandemic period. Hearings and meetings, urging that OMB direct agencies to extend public comment periods by at least 45 days beyond the end of the declared national emergency. We encourage California to do the same. If not all agency hearings, meetings, and public comment periods can be postponed or extended, then we'd like to request that at the very least, the Delta Conveyance project be postponed. And I'm going to go ahead and read a statement from Mr. Jesus Tarango. I am writing on behalf of the Wilton Rancheria and the Delta tribes who stand in solidarity and agreement with the Delta Protection Commissioners and Eric Vink, Executive Director of the Delta Protection Commission, to assert that at this time and given the current circumstances surrounding COVID-19, we do not see fit that the public meetings and tribal consultation meetings related to the Delta Conveyance project continue. Many of us representing our tribes and the voice of the Native people, our tribal leaders, elected officials, directors, or administrators within our tribal communities and tribal nations. At this time, our attention is focused at the dire state of emergency our people are facing on and off our reservation and rancherias. The reality of this crisis has not been lost on Native people as entire communities continue to be impacted by this illness and its repercussions. We are asking that you responsibly, respectively, and understandably postpone any meetings or discussions regarding the Delta Conveyance project until this national pandemic has been successfully curbed. We do not believe that meaningful public engagement or tribal consultation can be achieved under the current emergency circumstances. We urge you to postpone all public meetings and comment periods effective immediately. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Ms. Tamaya. That was our last comment from the public. Any questions, discussions with respect to this item, board members?
I had an idea. I mean, it's not much of an idea. It's just something that I'm starting to formulate in my mind right now. I was wondering if there's any way we could help with the folks who are on the SEC, help them communicate, either through helping them send things out or, providing loaner hotspots or whatever. I don't know. It's just something that is very, I'm just thinking about these things. So that's it.
Catherine, were you going to say something?
No, I think we're going to continue to be transparent. The design and the role and the design is going to be going on for this year. The draft is out next year for public comment. DCA will always be around, continuing these meetings with the committee. So, I mean, we're committed to working through this time period. We understand that it may be difficult for people to outreach, but if 6 months from now it's easier and they can get the feedback, bring it on. There's no time limit on, there's no deadline on when they need to comment. So, I mean, if the real time that the comments come in is the draft EIS process. This, to me, is extra stuff that we're doing, engaging the public even more. But if comments come in 2-3 months from now, we'll go back and take a look at it. We're gonna, I think we can get through this. I really do. It'd be a shame not to.
One of the things too that I might point out is that we have actually seen with our virtual meetings, and I really am sorry of people who are having problems with this, but we have had a greater attendance than we have even in the past with some of the virtual meetings.
No, but that's not to say that we don't need to find ways to figure out ways to communicate with the community. Maybe what we do is we start sending mailers out or something. You know, I think there's opportunities here, as Anna said, to find a middle ground. Barbara said, maybe there's some other things we can think about.
Well, one of the things we might think about is sending out like mailers, and also if people request, we can send them stamped self-addressed envelopes, or stamped envelopes where if they're having any financial difficulties, we've already paid for the mail.
I mean, all I want to say is that we're listening to everyone, and we're sincerely going to look for ways to work through this situation. But I mean, the end game isn't for a long ways away. So, I mean, I just think it's a little bit premature right now to worry about whether or not somebody can comment in the next month or not, or in the next 2 months, and who knows when this ends. And I actually think I'd like to keep online participation for future meetings, because I think there's a lot of people who can't attend because they're at work on Wednesdays during the day, or they have other responsibilities. I think there's a lot of different ways for us to adapt and change the situation. So I welcome these comments. I always do, and my brain thinks about ways that we can solve these issues.
Okay.
That's all we can do.
Anyone else? Well, I think we ought to see, we have some high-tech folks on contract with respect to our own communications, and maybe they could help us with some way that we can help the community with Wi-Fi and some of these other problems that we have in communication. I think that would help us get a long way from where we are. So
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
do that and take a look and see how we can support the community with respect to that need. That's a big need, and I think it's a mutual need at this point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I had early conversations with Eric Vink, and that was brought up, and I've read about that in other documents. And we always thought, as part of the construction package, we're going to need online connectivity to do our work. And the project spans the Delta. It obviously was going to be a big part of the program moving forward, and an example of where you can create some mutual benefits from elements of the project. In the short term, I don't know what we can do in terms of broadband out in the Delta, but we'll certainly look into it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth looking into. Sometimes the timing just isn't perfect, and it looks like we need it more now than we would have otherwise.
Yeah, the pandemic wasn't on our risk log.
Precisely. Yeah, we should plan better next time.
Yeah.
But so I think we ought to look at that, and of course, I want to make sure that we're responsive to the folks that expressed their feelings today, their points of view. Of course, they're representative people of the community, so we know that they're not speaking with a lone voice. So I think it's important for us to make sure, like Nasli said, that we discuss this at the committee meeting, and that it's really up to the committee members where we go from here. So I'd encourage that. Now, lastly, since we're doing this virtually, I wanted to make sure that if Director Keegan was on, if she wanted to make a comment before we moved on to the next item.
Tony, Director Keegan is on, I believe.
Yes, I am on. Can you hear me now?
We
Yeah,
can.
yes.
Great.
Vice Chair, I wanted to make sure that we gave you an opportunity because it's virtual. I can't. I can't see you, so.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. And thank you for the speakers who've spoken tonight. You know,
Yeah.
what struck me was the passion and caring that I heard coming from all the speakers. And I think that that's something that's very heartwarming. And I think it's perhaps also a reflection of the good staff work and the work that Chair Palmer has put in terms of how we've handled the Stakeholder Engagement Committee. I do think that we have heard from some other folks who would like to continue with the process. And I think that we need to leave it up to the totality of the SEC to make a decision in terms of what they feel is appropriate. And as everyone mentioned, we're really in unprecedented times. And, you know, we can try moving this forward and let's just see how things work out. Let's see how the SEC committee members actually feel about all of this. And let's take a look at those other options that have been brought forward, like if there's issues with the fact that people don't have the ability to connect via Wi-Fi, is there anything that we can do to make that better, or other options that might be there? But I think it's premature at this point to take a position. I think we need to give our best effort to see how we can successfully move things forward. And, you know, we will need to adapt as necessary. So let's just like we're all of us adapting in our personal lives, right? I think we need to adapt with this. So I look forward to our next SEC meeting. And again, I want to thank all the speakers today because I felt like you truly were motivated by your heart, and it came across in your comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Keegan. I also appreciate your work on the committee. Is there any other comments? Okay, there being none, thank you for the discussion. Thank you for the discussion. We'll move right along to our next item on the agenda.
All right. So in your packet, you have something, we won't necessarily be speaking to this on the agenda every single month, but since it's the first time it's appeared on the agenda, I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. We now have a customer relationship management database where we can gather all of our engagement efforts, as well as any questions or comments that are made by the public, and store them. So in today's package, I've included the questions that were asked at our previous board meeting and answered those, and have presented those as part of this board package. And I plan to include this as a part of the future board packages as well. There were 5 technical questions asked last board meeting, and we provided a response to each of those. And just to let people know that in the future, the new website that we're rolling out in June, one of the things that it will have is a link to the database so that people can search questions that have been asked and answered, and there'll be multiple ways of searching it. But it'll make it easier for people to understand the wide array of questions that have been asked over the course of the DCA's work since we started up the SEC meetings, and that they can find these answers. So all part of continuing trying to find ways to be more transparent and responsive to the public when they ask questions. And maybe this will encourage more people to ask questions at these board meetings. With that, if the directors have any questions, I'd be glad to, or comments, be glad to address.
Any questions? this is, thank you. If there's no further questions, we'll move on to the next item, but this is a great idea. It's a great approach so that we could be more responsive. Thank you, Catherine. I really like this. It reminds us what it is that we're doing, and we're able to respond very directly to folks so that they get responses. I really appreciate that.
You bet.
So thank you. We'll move right along to our next item on the agenda.
Okay, you have your monthly report that you've read through. I just want to point out two issues. You know, as we're getting closer to the end of this fiscal year, we're starting to reforecast our budget based on activities. We reduced our commitments by about 11 million with a reduction in the engineering contract, mostly related to work that we won't be able to complete this year, largely due to delays in the field work. And we've also reduced our estimate at completion down to about 38 million. You'll see that in the cash flow curve where we estimate where we'll be. And again, this last month, we took the time to look at each line by line item and determine what would be able to be done this year versus what will need to go into next year's budget for approval. So our estimate at completion this month is dropped down from, we were at about, I think we're in the 49 million last month, and we're down to about 38 million. And if anyone has any questions on anything else in the presentation, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions?
Comment. I was very pleased to see the I guess it is on the section 5 on the budget, that graph was really explained a lot to me. I'm a very visual person. So well done.
Thank you.
Yes, well done. Any further questions?
So Tony, we do have a comment from OSHA Reserve on this item.
Yes.
Hi,
Mr.
actually,
Murphy?
that's all
Yes.
right. I don't. Hi, I
Yes.
don't have a comment. Thank you, though. Thank you, Claudia.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Okay. Thank you. We'll move right along then to our next item.
Thanks, President Estromera. Before I get into my report, I just wanted to thank you and the board for your approval of 7A. I really appreciate the opportunity to continue working on the program. So my written reports in the packet, there were two items I wanted to note for the group. The first is that construction remains ongoing on the first floor boardroom. Under the most recent Sacramento County Health Order, all construction continues to be an essential business. The second issue is following up on the AB 1234 ethics training we had discussed last month. That training had been rescheduled and will now take place next week. So that's all I had, but I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has.
Thank you, Josh. Any questions? All right. Thank you, Josh, and thank you for continuing on your contract. We're very satisfied with your services. Thank you for continuing. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. We'll move right along then to the Treasurer's report.
Good afternoon.
Donna? Yes.
Hello. Hi. So just to alert everybody, because just in case you're concerned, the markets have been really volatile the last 1 month, but they've settled back quite a bit. So along with this money, we invest and hold to maturity a lot of our investments so we don't lose any principal. So that's been our directive. We had a nice report to the board this past Monday. And as far as this report is concerned, we began the month with about $1.6 million in cash. We received about $6 million from DCO. We made payments of about 3.2 and ended up with about 4.4 million. But shortly after that, in about April 9th, we made a few other payments and ended up, as of April 9th, with $775,000. And we continue to watch and monitor that we pay our bills on time. We still have quite a few payables, 6.7 million that we anticipate to pay this month. Included in the report is also budget versus actual. This is something that I typically do not report out a lot, but as the new year comes, as we develop the new budget, it's something that I will focus on and reconcile with the executive director. You'll see sometimes that we have a slight lag because we look at it as we pay the bills, they look at it as they receive the bills. So we will look at that and continue to reconcile, especially as, hopefully as the projects ramps up a little bit. So that's my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Katano. Any questions? Great, thank you very much. We'll move right along to our next item on the agenda.
Good afternoon, this is Carrie Buckman.
Yes,
And so my report was included in the board packet. I think the main thing to note is that the close of the CEQA comment period for scoping is tomorrow, and comments are due either via email, phone, or mail. If they're mailed, they just need to be postmarked by tomorrow. Otherwise, they are due by close of business tomorrow.
Any questions of Carrie? Okay, thank you very much, Carrie. Move right along to our next item on the agenda.
Verbal reports.
Claudia, what's next?
Verbal reports.
Verbal reports.
Okay, I don't have the agenda in front of me, so.
That's okay. So I think Catherine might have an update for us.
Thank you.
I don't have any verbal reports. I think I'm good.
Okay, great.
Okay. FYI, I just went ahead to a couple of meetings that I think might be of interest. I did the Delta Protection Commission, and Catherine and Carrie both spoke at that. It was interesting what they were bringing up, and then also I think it was yesterday, Aqua gave a presentation on the financial effects of COVID-19 and how FEMA and some of the stimulus packages might be affecting agencies and basically shovel-ready things. But some of the stuff that they were saying is potential to apply anyway with some of the stimulus packages. So I don't know if any of this will apply to us, but I will be glad to provide I'm getting a copy of the PowerPoints. I'll be glad to provide a copy of the PowerPoints to folks here, and it was pretty interesting and useful in terms of financials.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Any other comments? Any verbal reports? Okay, I think we're at the end of our agenda. Any items for our next agenda? Okay. Okay, there being none, then we're at the point of adjournment. I wanted to thank everyone. For our meeting today, and especially members of the public that had comments for us. We really appreciate those. Thank you all. Please stay safe. Take care of yourselves, and we'll adjourn now to our next regularly scheduled meeting.
And stay active.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.